Well, there are other scientists who didn't like this idea as well, the idea that the universe had a beginning, and one was Sir Arthur Eddington, who was also here in Cambridge. And he was famously quoted as saying, "Philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order is repugnant to me. I should like to find a genuine loophole. I simply do not believe the present order of things started off with a bang. The expanding universe, outward from the beginning, the expanding universe is preposterous. It leaves me cold." Well, this alternate theory in psychology is known as denial.
Science changes. Michael Polanyi, who died in 1976 and was a chemist and noted philosopher of science, pointed out that natural scientists find themselves having to believe some things that they know will later be shown to be wrong, but not being sure which of their present beliefs would turn out to be erroneous. And a classic example of that is that at the end of the 19th century it was considered that, well, science is all over. Newton gave the basic laws of classical physics, and we've added to that, and now we understand everything. And then scientists started looking more deeply, and they found there were problems in classical physics, and then Einstein came up with his relativity theories, and then quantum theory came along and really turned everything upside down.
And Einstein goes into the telescope, he takes a peek, and then 2 weeks later, this is Hubble in the background with a pipe, and 2 weeks later, he does an interview with the New York Times and admits that the universe is not static, and then he says the three hardest words to say in the English language, "I was wrong." Okay. And he later, to his credit, I mean, he said that his fine-tuning of the cosmological constant to obscure the evidence for the beginning of the universe was the greatest blunder. In my book, I said it was the greatest blunder of his career. I misquoted him. It was stronger. He said it was the greatest blunder of my life. Okay, he let his philosophical predilections distort his evaluation of the evidence.
Science has developed largely through devices which have been devised to enhance human senses of perception, which are limited and imperfect. So therefore, telescopes, microscopes, particle accelerators, computers, which record and analyze endless data. And all of this leads to new insights and new theories, which means science changes. Various speculations come into being. Some are accepted, some are considered authoritative, and then they go out of fashion. Not everything in science changes, but there are examples of how scientific speculations about the universe changed. Famously, the Earth was considered the center of the universe. Then in 1543, Copernicus discovered that the Earth and other planets in our solar system orbit the sun, but geocentricity persisted for quite some time. There was a lot of opposition famously to Galileo, who wanted to prove what Copernicus had said. So the idea of the Earth being center of the universe, that was considered a fact. It changed. Another point, until 1915, the cosmos was seen as eternal, fixed, and static by mainstream physicists, including Einstein. The Milky Way was considered to be the entire universe. Now it's just considered one among billions of galaxies. Things change. The view of the cosmos has changed radically. Scientists using high-power radio telescopes can see billions of galaxies that are billions of light years distant from the Earth. We can't even imagine what it means to be billions of light years away. Our lifespan is within, let's say, 100 years. And it's very difficult for us to even imagine what a billion years is, what to speak of billions of light years. So the idea of the universe just being as it is, just this Milky Way, that changed. And also it's now understood or accepted by mainstream scientists that the universe is expanding. The stellar bodies are moving away from each other, and moving away from the center, whatever that is, due to cosmic expansion. Far bigger. What we perceive the universe to be is far bigger than previously. And one interesting observation is that even though by looking at the stars, even with our naked eye, what to speak of through telescopes, what to speak of through radio telescopes, what to speak of through computer telescopes, then our perception of the importance of human beings, it should be very small. We are small in relation to the universe, but as we understand how vast the universe is, we should understand more and more. We're getting proportionately smaller. Science changes. Just for the sake of argument, if society more or less goes on in the way it's going on now, God forbid, whoops, you're not supposed to believe in God, right? Anyway, if society goes on more or less in the way it does now, and we don't all destroy ourselves by some massive war, as Einstein said, I don't know what weapons the Third World War will be fought with, but the Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones. Think about that. Anyway, if science goes on more or less the way it's been going on, which would require society to go on more or less the way it's going on, so in 1,000 years, scientists of that time will look back and see the science of today as being so backward, so foolish. So they will think that we at our time were wrong, now we 1,000 years later are right. They were wrong, we are right. And then later another generation or a few hundred years later will come along and look back to those 1,000 years from now and say, they were all wrong, now we are right. And this can go on and on and on. We say the progress of science.
People often say, where are the intermediate fossils? Show us your intermediate fossils. There are plenty of intermediate fossils, and one of the best examples is whales. The modern whales are up there. Here's a series of fossils back in time. Dorodon about 36 million years ago, Rhodocetus about 47.5 million years, Pachycetus about 48.5 million years.
Flopping from one, we can say, incomplete theory to another. We're not saying that's all wrong. After all, this video is being shot with technology which was developed via science. But again, we should know the limits of science. The very fact that science changes means it's not perfect. The underground human outlook is changing. I'm talking about right here in the 21st century. What I mean by underground is that away from the scientific orthodoxy, from the halls of academia, from the accepted publications massively in human society, there's a great distrust in science. And I'm going to talk about that in another talk. Distrust in science, distrust in vaccines, distrust in genetically modified foods, which scientists assure us are safe. They assure us that vaccines are safe. Distrust in allopathic medicine. And although the orthodox medical community hates it, there is increasing faith in natural healing and so on. Anyway, I'll talk about the distrust in science. So I'm just saying that science changes, and despite the insistence of the scientific orthodoxy that we know, listen to us, if you have any other opinion, you're dangerous, you're misleading people, but science changes. Planck's principle, again, if you know anything about science, then you must have heard of Max Planck, the father of quantum physics. Planck's principle is the view that scientific change does not occur because individual scientists change their minds, but what happens is that it's a generational change, and that a new scientific perspective does not become accepted by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. Max Planck wrote, "An important scientific innovation rarely makes its way by gradually winning over and converting its opponents. What does happen is that its opponents gradually die out, and that the growing generation is familiarized with the ideas from the beginning. Another instance of the fact that the future lies with the youth." Colloquially, this short paragraph is often paraphrased by saying, "Science progresses one funeral at a time." This quote of Planck has been developed by other philosophers of science, especially Thomas Kuhn in his very important book for understanding how science works called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Thomas Kuhn shows that scientific revolutions, they don't proceed in an orderly way through, as he says, mere force of truth and fact, but rather the way science works is that scientists, in the way they accept opinions or reject opinions, it's non-rational. It's not truly objective. This is how scientific change comes about, according to such a big figure as Max Planck, and Thomas Kuhn has analyzed this in some detail.